welcome to the Momversation Club. I'm Claire Strong.
And I'm Christina Struckmeyer. We're two moms just like you, navigating the nitty-grittiness of modern motherhood and taking you along with us as we talk about the topics that nobody talks about.
And today we're talking about raising girls in today's world and how we intentionally parent to raise strong women. Hi, Christina.
Hey, Claire. How's it going?
It's going good. You're looking lovely for all our YouTube viewers out there.
Oh, thank you. I went shopping recently and got myself a cute little top, and I showered today, so things are looking up.
I know. Tell me about it. When people pay me a compliment, it's usually just because I've washed my hair. But by the way, you always look lovely. Because here's the thing: I just paid you this compliment off air, and then you basically told me to go and you know what myself. And I was like, "Hey, girl! I mean, just take it. You always look lovely, and today you look particularly lovely."
Okay, some context. We talked to our editor before we start the podcast record, and she said, "Oh, for our lovely editor, Christina does look nice today," as if I don't look nice all the time. And so I said,
"Oh
Claire,
my God,
nice all the
time. So sensitive. You look all the time, but you look particularly lovely today." Anyhow, listen, you too. Hey, this actually is quite the segue into today's topic because we are chatting about raising our girls to become strong women because we are girl mums. We have 4 girls between us and no boys in the house if we, don't include our husbands. And so, so this is a good one. When you brought this idea up in our planning session, I really, really went for this one because this is something that is on my radar a lot, especially as my girls are growing. So do you want to get this conversation started?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's top of mind right now. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world where, and honestly, all the time, like whether you're right now in current politics or you go back 5-10 years, like women have a certain level of hardship to deal with. And we kind of have to navigate our lives in a world that isn't really set up for us to always be succeeding and being on top. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things that I go into my parenting with when you are like a girl mom, when you are a mom. And also on the flip side, I have friends that have boys, and there's certain things that they're a lot more intentional about because they have boys and they have kind of a different societal situation happening with them. And I just think it's a different path that I think current moms are taking. We're a lot more aware of these things. We're a lot more intentional about when we're raising whatever child we're raising, what they're going to face in today's world versus I think in the past where kids were told to be kids and be quiet and go over there. I don't know about your experience, but that was not the case. I don't believe there was, with my background, any intention going on with the type of person we're raising. What about you, Claire? Do you feel like there was some intention back behind in the 90s when you were being raised with other people having that vibe?
I'm thinking back. I mean, my mum and dad really wanted for me to go and be successful. It was never that I was kind of brought up thinking that I couldn't achieve what my brother could achieve because I was a girl. There wasn't any of that. But I do think, and you and I have spoken about this before, I think the 90s was probably the first decade where women were kind of, under the impression that they could have it all. And so I think in some ways, maybe there was extra pressure on us from the 90s onwards because, women could go and get careers and could still have a family and they could be, great at everything. And so I feel that probably was starting to happen a little bit in the 90s when I was growing up. And certainly in the 2000s, when I started out in my career, I definitely thought, well, I can do it all. I can, when I want to have kids, I'll still be able to have this career of mine that I've got as a journalist who works God knows how many hours a day, starting at 3:30 a.m. in the morning. But somehow I thought I was still going to be able to, rock everything that I ever did. And I'll be honest, it hasn't turned out like that. I've found it very difficult to be super successful in all areas of my life. And by all areas, I'm talking about parenting and my career in particular. It's a real tough one. I mean, how do you feel about that? Because like me, you went to university, you actually studied journalism like I did. You had, you were the boss babe. You had the career, and then you started having a family, kind of a little bit like me. So how do you feel about
Yeah.
all of that?
Man, I feel like you're so right. Like our families, the decades that we were raised in,
Mm,
definitely were pushing the narrative of like
yeah,
do it all, have it all. I don't know that there was a lot of open conversation of what that actually is and looks like.
yeah,
I think that one thing we're doing right, and there's about a million things I'm sure people will tell us that we're doing wrong.
mm,
But one thing we're doing right is I feel like parents are a little bit more transparent with children at appropriate levels.
yeah,
And they're able to see what balance can look like and what's possible. And maybe certain seasons are for certain things and other times are for other things. And I just think that we're a lot more real with our kids, if that makes sense. Like we're a lot more open and vulnerable and aware that our words and our things that we do have power. And
yeah,
so yeah, I agree.
yeah.
I'm like we're a lot more like the first phase was like we can, and now we're like okay, we can, but also here's how that looks in practice.
Yeah, and so when my girls were little, I think I was still holding on to that. Oh, I need to be a superstar in front of them. I need to show them that mummy goes and works 9 hours a day at the news station, and then she comes home, and then she's making dinner for everyone. And mummy's got like all this energy, and she's got it all going on, and everything's fantastic. And then so that was when they were little. My girls are now teenagers. I feel that over the last 5 to 7 years, particularly since I've moved countries, because I was obviously in the UK with them initially and then moved here to the States 7 years ago.
Wow.
And I think certainly since that transition, I've had to be more transparent because it's been more difficult to like gloss over things and hide things. So they have seen me in a much more vulnerable state than they did previously, and not to the point where I'm literally having a breakdown in front of them, but they do see that I'm tired. They do see that I'm hustling. They do see that I have a lot of setbacks that I have to overcome, and it's not all perfect. But I do hope that the one thing I am teaching them through my own trials and tribulations, especially as an immigrant who's had to start from scratch in a new country, is just be resilient and get yourself back up and keep moving forward. That's the one thing that I think I've shown the girls, and I continue to show them, that even though life sets you back, just get up and move forward. So yeah, I mean, so that's
It's a
kind of
great
where
example.
I'm at.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what?
I have little guys. You're in a great situation because you can see the power of the things that you're doing and the effects they're already having because your girls are starting to become who they're going to become. Like you can see the
Yeah,
early stages of adulthood.
yeah, definitely.
I'm currently in the like building stage of people.
Yeah.
And so, mine's less back and forth conversation and more just like intentional things that I'm trying to undo
Mhm.
that are out there. One of the big things in anything you can do, I can do better, land is to dismantle gender stereotypes. Like you
Yeah,
mentioned, like mom can do it
yeah,
all and then come home and do the laundry and the dishes. Well, does mom need to do that? Like, is that
yeah.
always mom? Um,
Mhm.
we work really hard at our house to promote gender neutral activities. There's a lot of like not for girls agenda that's out there. This is
Mhm.
for girls, this is for boys. We knock that shit out. There's a lot of pink. Like, let me
Yeah,
be real. There's a lot of
yeah.
pink in my house. There's a lot of tutus. There's a lot of fairy princesses and Disney. But we also have Hot Wheels and tractors. And we
Mhm.
also, have things that are traditionally boy toys. And I don't label them. And I think it's important, even in like collective work, like when we're at a play group or something. If a little boy's playing with a doll, that doesn't mean he's playing with a girl toy. It just means he's playing with a doll. I'm really working hard
Mhm.
to dismantle that ideology because I think it leads to furthering ideas of this type of works for women, this type of works for
Yes.
men.
It does, and it can be very limiting as a woman if you develop that ideology yourself and you take that on board. It can be both limiting and overwhelming, because you're limiting yourself thinking that you can only do these certain things because that's what girls and women do, and you're also overwhelming yourself by saying I need to do these things because that's what girls and women do. So I agree
Yeah.
100% with that.
Yeah.
Little things, I mean, I do some practical things as well. I'll give you a real life example from just 2 or 3 nights ago. So my youngest daughter shouted me from downstairs. She was like, Mom, the shower's blocked. Can you come and unblock the shower? Now, full disclosure, when I was growing up, my dad did anything like that. He was really handy. And so growing up, I really didn't do anything around the house as far as I didn't know. This is kind of embarrassing. I'd never changed a light bulb in my life until I was living on my own in my late 20s. Like never, never, never. Because my dad always did stuff like that. And I lived, even when I left home initially, I was living near them. So he would do any kind of practical thing, handy thing, it would be him. And so my husband now is not very handy. He won't mind me saying this. He admits it. He's not the handiest guy. And so that's number one. But number two, even if he was, I don't want the girls growing up not knowing how to do things that they are perfectly capable of doing for themselves. They don't need to outsource stuff like this to guys, because that's just, I feel that by doing that, it's creating this dependability that they need a guy around to be able to function. And I don't want them thinking that. So this was a very practical, small thing. But instead of, so Eva called me up from downstairs to unblock the shower. I didn't even bother mentioning it to my husband. He was doing something else downstairs. I was like, I'm coming. And then I was like, this is a learning opportunity. So I went and got the snake thing, whatever it's called, that thing that you shove down a drain. And because it was hair blocking it, because I've got 2 girls in the shower with long hair. Anyway, so I said, girls, I was like, I'm going to come and clean your shower, but I want you to watch what I'm doing because I want you to be able to clean your own shower. And so I demonstrated, I'm not even very good at it, but I demonstrated with this. I made it look like I was an expert. I was like, so this is the snake and you put it down there and you like do this. And anyhow, I did a demo. I sorted out the problem without any man involved, and they know next time how to unblock their shower. So it was only a small thing, but I'm very, very aware and cognizant that I want them to be able to do things like that. Same as changing light bulbs. You don't need to call, my husband to change a light bulb. You can change a light bulb. This is how you do it. Just practical things. Those empower you to know that you can do stuff on your own. You don't need another person. You definitely don't need a guy. You've got it. It's okay.
I think that's so important. And I think one of the things that I'm a lot more focused on what I'm going to do, because a lot of the stuff right now is that I'm watching and observing.
Yes.
I hope to model that sharing household responsibilities is the way we do things. And there isn't really man's work versus women's work, but more so like this person's better at this. Naturally, their talents lead towards this. So this is why they do it. And there's certain things that my husband does that are traditionally women's work. And there's certain things that I do that maybe isn't expected of me. And I think that when I have these conversations with the girls, it's going to be like, well, when you find your partner, whoever that might be, you're going to be good at certain things and not good at other things. And you kind of work collectively to figure out who's on what.
Yes. I like that approach, Christina, because so in our house, for example, my husband is just a lot tidier than me and a lot neater than me. And so I generally cook because I like to cook. I love cooking. It's not because, I'm the woman and I have to cook. I am the cook in the house because I love cooking, and the girls actually really enjoy it too. So I will always do dinner, but I never do the dishes because I'm not very, honestly, I mean, I know it's a simple task, but I'm not the best at dishes. It takes me a long time to get through them. I don't stack the dishwasher in a way that, because my husband's a bit OCD with this, he has to have it like a certain way. I just shove it in. It's just in there. It's good. He has, in fact, it's to the point, Christina, where I don't even bother loading the dishwasher because it's going to get rearranged. He has to rearrange it. So it's fine. That's fine by me. I don't enjoy it anyway. So we have this deal where I cook and he does the cleanup, whether it's the pans, he'll scrub the pans down, and then he places everything in the dishwasher really neatly. So, and that works for us. similarly, he's better at cleaning away clutter than I am, because I think clutter overwhelms me. I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, where does it go? Where do I start with it? So he's better at doing stuff like that. And even like the laundry, he organizes the laundry and folds stuff up much quicker and much more effectively than I do. But then,
Yeah.
I take the dogs out every day. We have 3 rescue dogs here. I walk those dogs every single day. He doesn't do that. I take the trash out. I mean, he does the trash too, but I walk one of our dogs who won't go to the bathroom in our garden, in our yard. I take her down the street at 11 o'clock at night before I go to bed. That would have been something my dad would have done, because that's just what, as the man of the house, he would have done that. But we shake things up in our house, and that's what I do every night. My husband wouldn't even think to walk the dog before bed. But he's scrubbing the pans, so it works for us.
I think it's a really great way to do things, not only because it fosters like a sense of partnership with your marriage, but also like your kids are watching this model, and it leads them to, even if it's a small thing such as the dishes, it furthers to bigger things. Like, oh, well, if my mom knows how to change, a light bulb or do plumbing, maybe that's a career I go into, or maybe that's something I can do too. It leads towards stuff. And so I'm like that with most parenting. I'm like, this might seem small right now, but this opens up a bigger picture. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff as women that we do with modeling. And then there's some stuff when it comes to that, I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't handle the car. I don't handle like certain things, but that's not because I'm a woman. It's because I'm just clueless as to how that operates.
This is what I was about to say. I don't know anything about the car either. If the car breaks down, the only thing I know to do is call the number, the breakdown people. I don't know how to change a tire. I don't know anything about the car. But here's the thing. It's not because I'm a woman. It's because that has never interested me. And frankly, I've never taken the time to learn about it. So that's on me. But it's not because I'm a woman. I know people who are women who know how to do all of that stuff, and they actually quite enjoy it. But that's just not my bag. So as long as I can, if I'm in a situation, get myself out of it. So if there's something going on with the car, I have the breakdown number that I can call, then we're good. I'm not going to be, helpless and waiting for someone to, tell me what to do. I know how that works. But so I like that you're saying it's not, you do things and you don't do things, not because you're a woman, but because you either enjoy it or you don't enjoy it, or you're good at it or you're not good at it. And I think that's what it needs to be. It's not that it's a woman's job. It's not that it's a man's job. It's because this person is better at it, and they just have a natural inclination towards it. And so why not let those people do that, and you do you.
Yeah, and I think that that's something any mom can ring into. Like, even if you're a boy mom and you have all boys, like, it would be nice for them to see that that kind of display of boys can do dishes, boys can do this, boys can play with dolls. Like, this is fine. But I think also the other thing about being a girl mom, and I don't know if you feel this, Claire, is that I'm inherently aware of how the world will treat or look at my girls. And I'm aware of how I felt in certain situations, and the vulnerability of being a woman in today's world, and also just in general. One of the biggest things I am intentional about is body safety. That's a big one in our house.
Yeah. Talk to me more about that. What do you mean by that? Because that's something that really comes into the forefront when you've got teenagers and older kids.
Yeah, so the body is a big thing in our house. I try not to like overpower, but I also am just very intentional about body positivity and body image, making sure that it's not just something I say, but something I model. And it's little stuff. Like when my toddler pulls up my shirt to look at my belly, I'm not like, oh my gosh, no. I'm like, oh, yep, my belly could be a drum too. And like, I will drum my belly, like, even though it's maybe not something I do in public. It's something I'm doing to model, like, every body is fine. This is fine. Like, your body is your body. But the other thing is, your body is yours.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing I teach from a young age, meaning that you don't have to do anything with your body that you don't want to do. No means no is a big one. And that starts early with things like, right now I'm dealing with a lot of my older one wants to hug my younger one, and my younger one doesn't like to be hugged all the time. And so I'll say, hey, okay, your sister said no, and that's her body. She says no. And so you're not going to touch her unless she says yes. Like we
I
do a
love
lot
it.
of consent.
Mm,
Um, Same thing with like when you're greeting people and maybe they ask for a hug and your child doesn't want to hug that person for whatever reason. I don't make my children hug people. And that's kind of controversial, especially around the grandmas and stuff. Like my kids don't need to hug anybody they don't want to hug because it's their body and they get to choose. I do make sure they're polite. So I'll
yes.
say, oh, well, grandma's saying hi. If you don't want to hug, that's fine. You can wave or give a high five.
That's interesting. Yeah, so you're basically, because your kids are younger, you're not even identifying threats, if you like, or putting boundaries up with of the opposite sex. You're saying that just as something as like benign or simple as your sister wanting to hug you when you don't want that hug, you're using that as an example of boundaries, which I really like. That's very
Yeah.
clever, Christina. Yeah,
Yeah. Or like, say mommy's tickling me and I don't want to be
yeah,
tickled anymore. We
yes,
stop. And
yeah,
I vocalize to her, like, oh, you don't want to be tickled? Okay, I hear your no. I won't tickle you anymore.
yeah.
I'm trying to let them assert and advocate for themselves about their body and their boundaries from an
Mhm.
early age with the intention of, as they get older, having the more layered conversation about, sexual consent and things that
Yes.
feel uncomfortable and that kind of stuff. But identifying their body parts, they know what each thing's called, they advocate for themselves, they tell you if they want privacy or not, even from a really young age.
Mm. Yeah, I love that, and I'm grateful that the stuff I've been doing with my girls is working too. Because just literally, actually, before we came on air today, I had an incident with one of my daughters where a boy at school had said inappropriate things to her. But because she's able to advocate for herself and she's confident enough to do that, she shuts it straight down and told the teacher. She told him that it was inappropriate. She told the teacher, and she's basically, totally taken control of the situation and handled it fantastically well. But that's because, both my girls, like your girls, even though your girls are much younger, they know what's appropriate and what's not, and they have a voice, which I love about both of them. They are not scared to speak out,
Yeah.
even if it means that maybe they're going to ruffle some feathers. If they feel that they have been inappropriately treated, especially by a boy, but even by a girl, they will speak out. So that's great. I mean, that's all we can hope for, isn't it?
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
I think as women, there's this like unspoken thing. I don't know if you feel it, but I definitely feel it of like, you need to be polite. You need to be likable. You need to be digestible to everyone. And that can sometimes put us in vulnerable situation or make us feel smaller or less than. And it's important for us to teach our kids, I think, that you can ruffle feathers. You can do things. If something feels off, it's probably off. There's
Hmm.
this thing that I've heard from like I listen to a lot of serial podcasts and like I watch a lot of Law and Order, but there's like this thing where you don't want to be non-polite. So
Mm.
you'll do things to be unsafe to make other people feel comfortable. A lot of people who get into situations with assault and things like that, you'll find that they often follow the same pattern of I didn't want to upset anyone or make anyone
Hmm.
feel like I didn't like them. It's better to be safe and be honoring yourself at the expense of other people being upset than for
Yeah.
you to do things that make you uncomfortable for them to be happy. I
You
want my
know,
girls to honor their own intuition and follow
yeah.
their own gut.
Yeah, it's so important. And honestly, this might sound a bit ridiculous because of the age and stage I'm at, but I still find that difficult sometimes, even though I'm trying to teach my girls something totally different. Just because I think the industry that I've worked in for most of my life, I started off before journalism, I was a model. I was young when I started modeling as well. I was probably 15. And so by the time I was 17, 18, 19, I was modeling on my own. I didn't have my mum with me. I was going off once I got my license, driving myself to jobs, or I was driving down to London or getting the train down to London. And I was in a very vulnerable situation, and so that kind of was my introduction to all of that world. And then even, I mean, even as recently as literally, last year, I have situations with some of the guys that I've had to work with, and they've not been ideal. And I've been in a situation where I know I needed to shut that down and speak up, and I've probably tolerated inappropriate behavior for too long because I don't want to ruin this project we're working on. I'm really enjoying this project. If I kind of say what I really want to say, this project's going to fall apart, and then all my hard work's gone down the drain. And so even now, as a grown woman, I still do struggle with that sometimes, despite the fact that I'm hopefully raising my girls to not be that way. So yeah, it's really difficult. As women, we are still put in very difficult situations at the hands of guys in a lot of situations. And there was that Blake Lively situation lately, and I think some people, I don't know whether you know about that, but
I'm so invested in that. It's also a masterclass in like this whole dynamic.
Okay, so tell you what, because you are it sounds like you're more invested than I am in this. Just explain to people that might not know what we're referring to, the crux of that situation, because I definitely
Yeah.
saw similarities lots of similarities in my life with that.
Yes. So the crux of the situation is there is a movie called It Ends With Us, and
Mm-hmm.
it stars two actors, an actress named Blake Lively and an actor named Justin Baldoni. And they were very close. The movie is about domestic violence.
Yes.
And also, there's a lot of romantic scenes. There's a lot of like intimacy type things going on. And there has been a lot of kind of commotion because there was a lot of backfired press on Blake Lively when the movie was rolling out, because she kind of led with this sense of girl power, grab your florals, come see the movie kind of verbiage of kind of downplaying the domestic violence and more so kind of presenting it as a romantic comedy. And then Justin Baldoni, on the other hand, was really leaning into the domestic violence portion of it. He's also, I should mention, a producer and the director of the movie. So a lot of power, a lot of control. So that happened. And then Blake Lively was getting a lot of bad press. And then it flipped. And there was a lot of bad press for Justin Baldoni. And then we were back to Blake Lively and getting bad press. And it just felt like it was flip-flopping between these two sides for a while. And come to find out, they both were kind of behind the scenes trying to spin the press a certain way, because they both have this dynamic that happened behind the scenes that we really don't know what happened as an audience, where Blake Lively feels as if she was sexually harassed and put in uncomfortable situations and felt very uncomfortable in those spaces. Justin Baldoni asserts that he did not do those things. He's been misrepresented, and he is now facing like kind of a backlash because you can't really come back from feeling like there's allegations against you of sexual assault and that kind of stuff. And I should say like misconduct, not assault, misconduct.
Well, yeah, I think from what I've read and what I can gather, it was things like just inappropriate things being said, what some people would refer to as locker talk that gets out of control. And listen, I've been in those situations very, very recently, and here's the thing. Blake Lively is, I mean, good for her. If those things happen, good for her for speaking out. But she is in a privileged position because she, she's not going to be on the breadline if she doesn't get another contract, or if, So what I'm saying to you is a lot of people don't have the luxury in some aspects that Blake Lively.
They've been in uncomfortable situations that they have to navigate without the ability to speak out without being hit on, without having a big hit taken on them.
For sure. And, it can come down to literally, well, I can't pay my rent next month if I don't get this job, or if we're talking about really serious situations. And so it's even more important that we empower our daughters, going back to the initial, concept of this conversation, because it's difficult, and it takes a lot of bravery and courage, a lot of times, to speak out about injustices and to speak out about sexual harassment. But
Well,
it
and
can't be okay that people suffer in silence.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing about it goes back to what we were just talking about being polite and honoring your intuition is that with this Blake Lively situation, there was some footage released of, Blake Lively had, there's a lawsuit going on where she alleges that, there was some extra kisses added to a scene, and there was, a scene was changed without her prior notice, and she felt uncomfortable and, very off put. And she described this feeling of the way she was feeling in that scene. And then Justin Baldoni's camp just released the behind the scenes footage of that scene to say, hey, look, like, we didn't do anything wrong. This is what was going on here. You can see for yourself. And as you're watching it, I think there's two different versions of people that can see different things in the video. Because as a woman,
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching Justin Baldoni maybe take some creative liberties as a director, as a producer, to change the scene to fit. I'm understanding that in his perspective, he probably felt like he was just doing his job and changing things and being artistic. But I'm watching as a woman, Blake Lively scooch back a little bit. I'm seeing some body language shift. I'm seeing her laugh uncomfortably. I'm seeing her kind of dance around the issue of her being uncomfortable, but not outright saying it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening. So there's two things going on at the same time that are both true, but nobody's getting that crossover because she's not, for whatever reason, feeling comfortable enough to assert, hey, cut. I'm uncomfortable. This doesn't feel right. Let's talk about this first and then continue on. She's not wanting to make a ruckus. And
Mm.
so at the detriment of her own feelings, she's going along to get along. And I feel like that happens in everyday life with women. There's been so many times where whether it's I've had a boss who was an older man, like in his 50s, who used to come around to look at my work and then put his hands on my shoulders.
Oh God,
And
really?
I was like a young PR professional, like my first entry level job. And he would be like, good job, and like touching me.
Mm.
And I knew it felt off, but he didn't grab my boobs. So, like,
Yes.
did I
Yes.
say anything? Like,
Yeah.
and he probably felt like he was just doing what he normally does. And I don't think he meant anything by it, but it made me
Mm.
uncomfortable. And so
Mm.
I think there's a lot of situations like that where we just allow things to happen to us to just for the greater good of everybody feeling okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And it just goes back to making sure that, us as mums, we are empowering our daughters and also our sons, because I know we're really focusing on girls because we have girls, but, empowering our girls and informing our sons of what is correct and acceptable behavior. And just making sure that from a girl perspective, that they do have the confidence and the self advocacy to speak out when they are not comfortable with the situation.
Yeah. And also on the boys' side, I know I have friends who are very intentional with raising, young men who
Mhm.
respect women, who honor women. And, one of the things I'm noticing is a conversation around consent. And if it's not an enthusiastic, yes, let's go, then we wait for that. Like, we don't just go with a half yes. And I think
Okay.
that's also something that we'll see in today's world. And it's so interesting. I think being married to a man who openly talks about his mind and like kind of what he's thinking in a way that he's like very like unshielded. I've learned a lot about the way men and women view different situations, and we can be looking at the exact same thing. And it's
Mm.
like almost like those pictures where you can see a duck or see a bunny. Like we're looking at the same thing,
Yeah,
but we have very different interpretations of what's happening
yeah.
right now.
Isn't that weird? And I noticed the same thing too. It's just there are some fundamental differences, I think, between how the male brain works and the female brain, because you're right. there any amount of times, my husband and I have reacted differently to a situation, or our initial reaction has been different, and then maybe we've spoken about it and he can then see, oh yeah, I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right, yeah, that was an important thing to think about too. I just thought about this initially. And it's just
Yeah.
so funny, we're just wired differently. But that's,
We are.
but that's not an excuse for inappropriate and unwanted behavior, obviously.
Yeah. And I think if again, like getting back to honoring their gut, like if something
Mhm.
feels off, it probably is. Trust your intuition. We are blessed with that as women. I think we get this feeling of something's unsafe or something feels off or something feels weird. But we ignore it, we push it down. And oftentimes we're right. Like oftentimes our body, our minds are trying to tell us something. And I think it's better to be safe than sorry. I've never regretted leaving a situation because I felt uncomfortable and then later been like, I really wish I had stayed to see how uncomfortable I would have gotten. you know, like, you know, I
Exactly.
just, we do things like that. And I think, obviously we are going to have conversations with our kids about vulnerability as women and the things that happen to women. And, even though people try to blame you and say it's your fault for things that might happen to you, there are things we can do to keep ourselves safe. And those are conversations that girl moms are having with their daughters that, I don't think those same conversations are going on in other households of just inherently having a danger to you because you are a woman.
Mm-hmm. My girls and I'm so pleased that they are advocating for themselves, but they will absolutely not hear of a woman or a girl being blamed for an attack on them. So whether it
Yeah.
be, and yes, as you said, there are things we can do to keep ourselves safe. We have always, as women and girls, and young women have to go that extra mile that men don't. But they will not hear of a woman being blamed or a girl being blamed, for example, if she was wearing a skimpy top and she was sexually assaulted. That's like not, or just, they're very much of it's their body, they can do with it what they want, and they, as women, as girls, they don't deserve obviously to be sexually assaulted or just inappropriately treated by guys or other boys because of how they present themselves. And I actually, again, I love that about them. They're a pair of feminists, my daughters, for
I
sure. And
love that.
I think I do too. I do too. And I think for so long, society has blamed the woman. Okay, well, she shouldn't have been out that late at night. What was she doing out on her own at that time of night? Why was she there? Why did she? She'd had a bit to drink. You really shouldn't be getting drunk if you're a woman, and just things that guys, it wouldn't, the same principles just don't apply to guys. And as women, I think we've always had the um we've always been looked at in a skeptical lens when it comes to anything that may have resulted in a sexual assault or just us being, uncomfortable. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it is up to us to change that narrative in our homes, at least. And let's face it, that's all we can do.
Yeah.
We can control what happens in our house and on the narrative in our homes. We can't control who is the leader of a country. We can't control, who is in power. Yes, we can obviously vote, but ultimately what's going outside our home is out of our control to a large extent.
Well, and again, we can have open conversations about, what we are seeing. I think it's important. I mean, I don't have kids of an age that they're able to notice what's happening right now. But and what's happening right now and being coded, like our politics of what's going on right now, our current
Yeah,
president, like
yeah,
what they say, the things they do.
yeah.
Um, if I did, I would make sure that my kids knew I didn't sign on that. I didn't co-sign on that. I don't feel the same. It's something that you can say, and this goes for the president or your Aunt Susie who said something inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back to that comment and say, hey, earlier when Aunt Susie said this, I want you to know that I don't agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why. And I think it's important for us to have those conversations one of the ways that that shows up in my life is with body positivity and diet culture. I've talked about this at length, but
Yeah.
I will have none of that with my
Yeah.
girls. I
Yeah.
think it's very important. We do not have those conversations with boys. Boys do not feel like they have to make themselves smaller and thinner constantly to appease to a female gaze.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to be the case with my girls and the way that they approach their body. And so sometimes I'll catch people in my life say things that I don't agree with, and I'll say,
Mhm.
that's not how I parent. We don't
Mhm.
talk like that here.
Mhm.
We don't say that word. And
Yeah.
I'll do it right in front of my kids. Like
Well,
I'll
good,
say,
good for
you
you.
know, if someone's saying the word fat, for instance, we don't say that. We
Yeah.
don't say that here. It's a word we don't say.
Yeah, yeah, and same here. And the other thing is, I don't have scales in my house, like weighing scales. I never have had because I don't know what I weigh. I don't know what the girls weigh. Obviously, they get weighed when they go to the doctors, but that is the extent of how often they get weighed when they go to the doctors, because I don't want them obsessing over weight. The other thing, my youngest said to me again just this morning on the school run, she's like, "Mum," she's like, "Do you think I'm pretty?" And I said to her, I said, I think you're gorgeous inside and out. And I make a big emphasis on, it's your what I love about you, and this is what makes you so gorgeous is, and it's things that aren't to do with a physical appearance. It's
Yeah,
things
like they're worth more than just the way they
it's
look.
things like, and honestly, I think it was a bit of a throwaway question she was asking me. She wasn't, seriously obsessing over it. It was kind of a bit flippant, but I did answer in a way that, yes, but more importantly, I think that, this is great about you. You're a great friend. You're really clever. You're really, responsible, and all the things that are nothing to do with her physical appearance.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can start so young. Like you can do that. I
Mhm.
do that now. And what you focus on grows, I think, in parenting. Like if you are someone who's intentional about, for instance, in my house, kindness is a big one.
Yes,
Like
same here.
I do
Yeah.
not care what you do for a living. I don't
Yeah.
care what way you swing. I don't care what sexual orientation. I don't
Yeah.
care about anything. You need to be a
Yeah.
kind human being. You need to be
Yeah.
someone who
Yeah.
is a good person in this world. And
Uh-huh.
so when I see kindness, I speak into it. And I'll say things like, the other day I was watching the girls interact in the back seat and I gave them each 2 graham crackers, okay, as snacks, like when we were driving down the road. And my toddler finished hers in like 5 seconds. She like hauled it down. And
Yeah.
my 10-year-old, she was sitting with her too, and she had already halfway eaten one. And the toddler was like, "Oh, gone," and kind of sad. And I watched without any prompting. The 10-year-old broke hers in half and gave her half.
Oh,
And as I was driving, I said, "Oh, I caught you being kind. I love that. Like, thank you for sharing with sister. You are such a kind little girl." And like, all reemphasize like kindness and just the goodness, the good qualities they have. And of course, they're beautiful. Like, our girls are beautiful.
yeah,
Everybody's kids
yeah.
are beautiful, but that's not what I want to focus on. Like, yes,
Definitely
you are beautiful, but you are mostly a kind, wonderful person.
and that's the thing. And I think kindness is the same in our house. Kindness is the number one quality we're looking for. And you know what I do like about my girls? They are kind, and they are the girls that will speak up if someone's been bullied, or they are the girls
Yes.
that will, if someone is sat on their own and they don't have any friends, they will introduce themselves and try and make that person feel less lonely. And that's what I like about them the most.
I love that. And it's kind of like, I want to raise girls. I want to raise women who
Yeah.
lift other women up and
Yes,
straighten
yes,
crowns and who, like you said, they stand up for what's right. And again, I think that that's not just intentional parenting, it's modeling. And I don't
yeah,
know about you, girl, but I am catching some internal programming that I do
yeah,
that I am trying really hard to undo. One
yes.
thing I noticed is I say sorry all of the time.
Mm,
And I noticed it with my toddler. We were in the grocery store, and as people were walking by, she'd go, "Sorry." And I'm
okay.
like, okay, like one time, that's fine. And then sorry again. And I'm like, what are you sorry for? Existing? Like,
Yeah,
why are you sorry? And
oh,
I'm
that's
realizing every time I pass someone in the aisle,
yeah.
even though I'm nowhere near them, I say, "Excuse me, sorry." Sorry
Yeah.
for what? Going to the can of tomatoes? Like why am I sorry?
So actually, you've just made me realize something. My girls will actually pull me up on that and say, "You don't need to say sorry, Mom." I'll say sorry to them. Oh yeah, oh I'm sorry. I've just, and they're like, "You don't need to say sorry. It's fine." I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah. I'm apologizing for something." I think that is a bit of an English thing too, but it's well, obviously now you're saying it. I think it might be a female thing. I
I
think
think
because yeah, yeah,
it's something we do, and it's something that they learn young because they're watching it. We're modeling what they're gonna eventually do.
yeah,
And it's one thing to say be kind. I notice this so much with other parents. It's like,
yeah,
oh, we value be kind. We're reading all the be kind books, but then you're
yeah.
talking shit about Kathy down the road in front of
Yes,
your kid. And it's
yes.
like you can't just say be kind and then be not kind. You have to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yes, you do. And on that note, I'd love to hear from our listeners. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? If we've got girl moms out there, if we've got boy moms out there, how are you raising, strong women, and what do you do in your house to make sure that, your girls, or if you have boys, that, the girls are feeling empowered and respected and the boys are being respectful. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys, because we need some tips too. And it's just, I think,
Sure.
particularly important in the world that we're living in right now, to make sure that we are raising good, kind people. And that brings us to the end of another episode of the Momversation Club.
And if you've enjoyed today's show, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a review.
We hope today's episode has helped you to feel more seen and less alone in motherhood. Until next time, bye for now.